In the easternmost part of the territory of the European Union, there is a country whose peculiarity is that, like the majority of Latin peoples located in Western Europe, it still preserves the vestiges of the passage of the Roman Empire. That's right. Romania is the Latin cousin that, due to its geographical location, has had to face countless conflicts with various peoples to preserve its survival. Are you interested in learning its history? Alright, then stay until the end of the video. In present-day Romania, the remains of the oldest Homo sapiens in Europe are found near the city of Anina, which are about 42,000 years old. These remains present a mix of Neanderthal traits with modern man, which generates certain theories. Another important prehistoric event was the discovery of the Tartary tablets, engravings not yet unanimously deciphered by archaeologists, which could be one of the first forms of writing in the world. Entering documented history, the Greek historian Herodotus documented the presence of people settled in Romania of unknown origin around 513 BC. Later, tribes of Indo-European origin arrived, the Getai and the Dacians, who despite sharing a common language and culture, remained divided into tribes with conflicts among themselves for a long time. However, with external incursions such as those of the Scythians and Celts, these peoples opted for unification under the command of King Burebista, which included some territories of the southern Thracians and corresponds to almost all of the territories of Romania and Moldova, with the Carpathians to the north and the Danube to the south as borders. This king came to rule a fleeting empire that ceased to expand upon his death in 44 BC. Faced with the expansion of the Roman Empire, conflicts began with the dying kingdom of Dacia. But it was not until the rule of the remembered Emperor Trajan that the conquest of Dacia was completed around 106 AD. After this, the Roman province of Dacia was founded, and yes, here begins an intense process of Romanization, which included the introduction of the Latin language. Roman rule ended around 275 after various invasions that included those of the Goths, Huns, Avars, Slavs, Hungarians, and Bulgarians. Some states that were established after Rome, the Germanic Gepid kingdom, quite related to the Goths. However, these were assimilated during the 4th century by the Empire of Attila Reign, which extended to much of Eastern Europe. Subsequently, the Avar Khaganate would settle, a Turkic state that extended from Pannonia, present-day Hungary, to the territories of various Slavic countries, even using Proto-Slavic as a lingua franca. Despite this, the Dacians continued speaking a Proto-Roman derived from Latin that was acquiring loans from Slavic languages, especially Bulgarian, and that remained to this day. And I say especially Bulgarian, considering that this people managed to extend their territory to form the Bulgarian Empire, which came to occupy all of Romanian territory and lasted from 681 to 1018 AD. During this period, the Romanian territory was disputed with another rising state, the Hungarians, who came from the Urals and settled in Pannonia. With pressures from the Byzantine Empire in the south, Kievan Rus in the north, and the Kingdom of Hungary in the east, the First Bulgarian Empire entered into decline at the beginning of the 11th century. With this, the territory of Romania was occupied by the Byzantines, who took a portion in the southeast, and the Hungarians, who had settled in part of the Transylvania region. There was also a region where the Proto-Romanians, who were called Balakos by the Byzantine Greeks, began to gain some autonomy as small principalities were being founded, although without yet forming a unified state. As you can imagine, these small states in such a conflict-ridden era would not have much of a future. And so it was. Around 1237, a powerful empire that had been expanding from the Mongolia steppes arrived, the Mongol Empire of Genghis Khan, which reached Eastern Europe. The territories were eventually annexed into the successor Golden Horde. On the other hand, it is also important to highlight that all of Transylvania was assimilated by the Hungarians around the 13th century, thus beginning the Magyarization of the region. The Mongols began to withdraw at the end of the 13th century as the center of power of the Golden Horde was consolidated between present-day Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan, leaving the way clear for the Hungarians to continue their policy of subjugation of the Balakos. However, all of this would change with the arrival of Basarab Bak. This king was the successor of Radu Black, a legendary figure who was the first voivode to rule over all of Wallachia, managing to unify them around 1290. Basarab, a well-documented figure, would receive a government that had to submit to vassalage and payment of tributes to the Hungarians, something he would refuse to accept. With this, the Wallachians rebelled during the Battle of Posada, in which, despite having a numerical disadvantage of 3-1, they managed to impose themselves on the Hungarians, who lose their hope of extending to the Black Sea. For his part, Basarab achieves the consolidation of the independence of the Principality of Wallachia. Despite this victory, the truth is that there were still many Romanians outside this principality, not only in Transylvania, but also in the region between the Carpathians and the Dniester River. In this latter area is where the Hungarians encouraged the foundation of the Principality of Moldavia as a new vassal state that would help them protect their state from Mongol attacks. In short, both Moldavia and Wallachia would have to face a new threat, the rising Ottoman Empire, which began its expansion in the 15th century. The Wallachians now begin a period of great uncertainty, as for long periods they remained independent, and several others had to submit to the Ottoman Empire, which demanded the payment of tributes to maintain dependence. One of the most remembered rulers during this period was Vlad III Tipes of the Draculesti dynasty, nicknamed the Impaler. Yes, the prince who inspired the famous character of Count Dracula. Although you may have the image of a macabre vampire, the Romanians remember him as a national hero who fought against the Ottomans. Of course, the rumors of his extreme cruelty turned him into the grim character we know. After the fall of the Hungarians to the Ottomans in the Battle of Mohacs, their influence in the region was absolutely diminished, while they themselves now become vassals of the absurd. The region of Transylvania was turned into the Eastern Kingdom of Hungary as a vassal of the Ottoman Empire, and by 1570, it became the Principality of Transylvania. Although this region received a strong Hungarian influence, the Romanian population remained firm in their language and customs. With this, we now have 3 Romanian states that were constantly subjected to Ottoman vassalage. But as mentioned before, there were moments of independence. Probably the most important was during the reign of Michael the Brave, a prince who took advantage of the disputes between the Absurd and the Ottomans to seize power of the 3 principalities simultaneously in the year 1600. This period, which lasted just under a year, marked the first unification of all Romanian peoples, so Michael is considered a national hero, and his figure is even invoked in the Romanian anthem. However, shortly after this ephemeral unification, Michael is betrayed and murdered, returning the principalities to Ottoman vassalage. His legacy was a point of reference for subsequent Romanian nationalism. Like all great empires, the Ottomans began their decline towards the end of the 17th century. This happened with their defeats in the wars against the Holy League, after which the Peace of Karlovitz was signed. With this agreement, the Turks permanently withdrew from Hungary, who now united with Austria, regained Transylvania. This region officially became part of the then Austrian Empire around 1711, administered by the Hungarian crown. Towards the end of the 18th century, with the French Revolution and the consequent Napoleonic Wars, feelings of independence began to emerge throughout the region, which fueled nationalism in Wallachia. Despite trying to remain neutral, the rising Russian Empire expanded its influence over Wallachia and Moldavia amidst these wars. Although this period was short, the Russians did not withdraw without first annexing part of the Moldavian territory. After this, Wallachia and Moldavia remained largely under Ottoman influence, although this empire was increasingly losing power. This was reflected in events such as in 1822, when the Ottoman Empire returned to Wallachia the right to appoint its princes. And as you can imagine, This is where a series of governments begin to stoke nationalist sentiment. With the decline of the Ottoman Empire, Russia would reappear, imposing the Organic Statute, a constitutional law, in which both Moldavia and Wallachia essentially became Russian protectorates. Likewise, pro-Russian rulers would be imposed. Reaching the year of revolutions in Europe, 1848 Wallachia would not be left behind. A group of intellectuals drive the Wallachian Revolution, in which the insurgents overthrow the then pro-Russian prince George Vivescu. Russia's response to militarily occupy the country. However, in the face of the Romanian people's desire for self-determination, the new law would end up being modified. During the Crimean War, in which both the Ottoman Empire and Russia were involved, the latter once again invaded Romanian territories, although they were ultimately defeated. Because of this, after the Treaty of Paris, both principalities would fall back under Ottoman influence. Despite continuing to fall under foreign influences, both Wallachia and Moldavia chose a single ruler, Alexander John Berpfurnd of Romania. This meant the unification of both Romanian states into the Principality of Romania. Yes, for the first time this name appears, and it is here when the path to full independence begins. The next step would be to take advantage of a new war between Russians and Ottomans, in which now, with the support of the Russians, the Romanians can definitively get rid of Ottoman influence. Of course, nothing is free, so part of the Moldova and Ukraine region in Moldova would go to Russia, more precisely, to present-day Ukraine. In any case, an outlet to the Black Sea was obtained, ceded by the Ottomans. To secure independence, the now independent Romanians chose to bring in a foreign prince, Karol Bърбърнц of the Hohenzollern dynasty, who had actually ruled since 1866. With this, and after the Congress of Berlin, Romania is recognized as an independent state by the European powers, which included distancing from Russian influence. Likewise, it ascends to the status of kingdom in 1881. Under this new German reign, Romania was gaining a more westernized vision, thus beginning industrialization and opening to the free market. Of course, if we talk about the Industrial Revolution, that means the consequent imperialist race of the powers and the beginning of tensions, which are reflected in various conflicts. In the case of Romania, it participated in the Second Balkan War, where it obtains from Brula of Bulgaria. Likewise, in the face of these tensions, the consolidation of military alliances arises, which explode with the assassination of the Austrian Archduke in Bosnia and Herzegovina. World War I had begun. Although Romania, ruled by a German house, chose to remain neutral, by the end of the war, it had absorbed almost all the nations of the continent. Finally, under pressure from the political class that supported the Triple Entente, Romania ended up joining them in the hope of regaining the territories with a Romanian majority in Transylvania and Bukovina. The Romanians began with serious defeats, being invaded by Bulgaria, Germany, and Austria-Hungary, which led to their surrender and handing over of almost all their territory, except for Moldavia, which was able to resist. However, with the subsequent defeat of the Central Powers, Romania was able to resume the war one day before it ended, which allowed it to end up on the winning side. Having even achieved a subsequent advance into Transylvania, the Treaty of Trianon was signed, in which the vote of the Transylvanians who opted for unification with Romania, thus separating from Hungary, was recognized. Likewise, with the fall of the Russian Empire after its revolution, they were also able to recover Moldova and Ukraine. Yes, with this, all Romanian territories were reunified. During the interwar period, a new war with Hungary stands out, after which it can reaffirm its sovereignty over Transylvania. Likewise, the economy was affected during the 29 crisis. In terms of politics, the Romanian kings were wary of the union of Soviet Socialist republics' communism, so the political class tended to lean towards fascism. The reign of King Carol II was also notable, as he gradually diminished the power of the political class while becoming more authoritarian. However, once World War II had begun, Romania was forced to hand over Moldova and Ukraine to the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, so it sought German support, who, to accept Romania's union with the Axis, demanded that it resolve its conflicts with Bulgaria and Hungary. Following this, Romania was forced to cede Dobruja and northern Transylvania respectively. With this disaster, Carol II was forced to abdicate in favor of his son, Michael Brântură, who in turn was overthrown by Prime Minister Ion Antonescu, who firmly consolidated the alliance with Germany, joining his country to the Axis. Despite starting with victories on the Eastern Front, supporting the German occupation of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the Soviets reversed the invasion, reaching the gates of Romanian territory. Faced with this imminent defeat, Antonescu is now overthrown by Michael Brântură, who chooses to switch sides in favor of the Soviets, fighting on their side until the German capitulation. After the war, Romania ends up losing Dobruja to Bulgaria and Moldova and Ukraine to the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, that is, Moldova as punishment for its initial alliance with the Axis. On the other hand, it can only recover northern Transylvania from Hungary. In addition, with the establishment of the Iron Curtain, the monarchy is forced to abdicate in favor of a communist government, thus giving birth to the Socialist Republic of Romania, east of the Curtain. Now, as a satellite state of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, Romania is linked to the Warsaw Pact militarily and to the Council for Mutual Economic Assistance economically. In this socialist period, the government of Nicolae Ceausescu from 1967 stands out, remembered as one of the most iron-fisted dictators in history. While during the first decade of his government, he tried to maintain some autonomy with respect to the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, even criticizing the invasion of Czechoslovakia at the beginning of the 80s, his regime became increasingly brutal and repressive. Some characteristics of the second decade included an exacerbated nationalism, a rigorous cult of personality, and a deterioration of relations with the West China and Israel, showing a closer approach to the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. In the face of the death of several dissidents, anti-communist movements began to emerge towards the end of the decade. With the decline of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and in the face of Ceausescu's clinging to Stalinist policies, protests arise that end in the violent Romanian Revolution of 1989, in which the opposition manages to turn the armed forces in their favor to overthrow and execute dictators Ceausescu and his wife on Christmas Day. This marked the end of the socialist era that came hand in hand with the end of the Cold War and the subsequent dissolution of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. After this, a period of transition begins from an economy completely controlled by the state to a free market. Given the precarious economic situation, as soon as the steel tenon is opened, thousands of Romanians go abroad, especially to countries like Spain and Italy. In terms of politics, Ion Iliescu was elected as president, who led the revolution of 1989. Also noteworthy here is the start of a movement for reunification with independent Moldova since 1991. Likewise, a rapprochement with the West begins. In 2004, it joins North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and in 2007, it gains access to the European Union. Despite all these changes, unfortunately, Romania remains one of the most corrupt countries on the continent, which severely affects its economy and development, continuing to encourage the migration of many Romanians in search of a better quality of life. What's your view on Romanians? Did you know about their Latin origin? Should it reunify with Moldova? Don't forget to leave your comment, and if you like this video, support me with a like and subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me on my social networks, and if you're interested in supporting this project, any donation on Patreon will be welcome. See you next time!